Okay, and welcome to this last minute cram for B1. I'm not going to go through everything. I'm going to focus on specific things that will hopefully be the harder topics, maybe the ones that you won't remember, and it will help you to get a better grade. Okay, so we'll start off with the nervous system, and this is called responding to change. So basically we've got these things called neurons, and these enable us to react to changes in our environment, and a change in the environment is called a stimulus. So, in this, a stimulus is detected by a receptor, something like your eyes or a pressure sensor on your skin. The information is then passed along in the form of, and this is very important, electrical impulses along your sensory neuron. It arrives at the CNS, and usually in the CNS there's a little thing called a relay neuron. And usually in a reflex action it's your spinal cord part of your CNS. The electrical impulse then travels along the motor neuron until it arrives at your effector, and the effector is always a muscle. And the key thing, whenever you write about muscles, always say contract. It's crucial. Get you an extra mark. 1 mark. Or glands, and glands secrete something. They might secrete sweat, they might secrete a hormone, but they'll secrete something. And this is what a reflex arc looks like. So you can see this diagram. We get here, we get our stimulus. It's detected by this pain sensor, which is our receptor. It travels along the sensory neuron. This is the spinal cord. It's just been cut, kind of cross section. Then it goes along a relay neuron, back to the arm and to a muscle, and the muscle would, what's that keyword? Contract. We've also got some things called synapses. These are between the neurons, so you can see between here and here, between here and here. Basically, instead of it being an electrical impulse, what happens is these little chemicals called neurotransmitters, probably just remember it's chemicals, get sent across the gap, okay, because the synapse is a gap, and it happens by diffusion. They move across, and then they cause an electrical impulse in your second neuron, and that will then pass along. Got hormones, okay, so in the female we've got 3 hormones that we need to know. We've got FSH, okay, which causes eggs to mature, and it stimulates the ovary to produce estrogen. It's kind of like a cycle. So FSH produces estrogen, okay, then estrogen causes this blood lining of the uterus to develop and inhibits FSH. So once that's produced, it stops FSH. That's because you don't want another egg to mature. And estrogen also stimulates LH production. Okay, so it stimulates LH production. LH inhibits estrogen, and LH is the hormone that causes the egg to be released. So that's the process. It takes about 28 days, and around about 14 days of ovulation happens, which is the release of the egg. Contraception, the idea is we inhibit production of FSH so eggs don't mature. Okay, so what we'll do is we will use estrogen as the contraceptive pill. A lot more often now they use progesterone, and that's because there are fewer side effects, but it has the same role. So that's how you spell progesterone down there. Facility treatments, we've got IVF. Basically the eggs are collected, fertilized in the lab, okay, that's with sperm cells. It says and then implanted, but firstly you'd allow them to divide a few times, and then you would implant them into the uterus of the woman. Advantages: if you can't give birth naturally, it'll allow you to. and also you can get multiple births, which some women might like. It's more likely to give twins, but that can raise complications, so that might be a disadvantage, and it's expensive. Finally, hormones and plant growth. Okay, so we've got something called phototropism, which is a plant growing towards the light. Okay, and we've got gravitropism, where the roots grow towards gravity, so it grows the right way up. The key word here is auxin, auxin, and that controls the responses. It's a hormone. So in this diagram, sun's on this side. Okay, so auxin is produced at the tip. Got to say that, that's a mark. Travels down the dark side, and then it causes these cells to get longer. So you can see these cells get longer, and that causes it to bend towards the light. That is phototropism. Okay, when we're looking at inheritance, it's crucial we know the basics. Okay, so we've got genetic information in the nucleus, and it's found on chromosomes. Okay, so chromosomes are just coils of DNA. We've got 23 pairs as humans. Then each chromosome, so we've got a nucleus here. These are our chromosomes, always in pairs. One that's come from ultimately our mother's egg, one that's come from ultimately our father's sperm. Then if you split these chromosomes down, they're split into genes. Okay, so these are lots of bands that show genes, okay, hundreds of thousands on each chromosome. And then we go to our DNA. So we've got nucleus, okay, which is the largest. Then we've got chromosomes, next largest. Then genes, and finally DNA. Next, we've got two modes of reproduction. Okay, so sexual, so it involves male and female gametes or sex cells. Okay, the crucial thing, it provides genetic variation. Okay, which is really crucial for survival. Otherwise, if a disease comes along, you might all die out. Asexual reproduction, one parent, there's no genetic variation, so we can therefore call them clones, and the cells of the body reproduce our cells in our body reproduce asexually. Okay, that's just for growth and repair, that is mitosis. But we'll do about that in B2. So we've got some advantages here. So for sexual reproduction, we get variation, increasing chances of species survival. Disadvantage, you need to find a partner, waste energy in that process. You waste energy in producing gametes. This one, asexual, much quicker. You can colonize an area really quickly just by producing copies of yourself with no genetic variation. So plant cloning, two methods. Cuttings, here we've got a method. Okay, so you cut a leaf off, you dip it in something called hormone rooting powder. That contains our lovely plant hormone auxin, and it causes them to turn roots. Okay, you then plant it, and you can see this then develops roots. Really quick and really cheap. The only thing is low numbers. And apart from the hormone rooting powder, you don't really need any specialist equipment. Tissue culture, it's more expensive, and it requires more. You've got to make sure everything's sterile, for example. It's a harder technique. But one of the key things is it produces thousands of new plants. So if you've got an endangered plant, not new pants like it says, huh? If you've got an endangered plant, you'd want to use tissue culture. So you cut lots and lots of bits of tissue from the plants. You put it on this agar gel containing auxins and nutrients, and they develop into tiny plantlets, and then we plant them, and then they'll grow. They will be clones, as will these. They're both types of clones. Okay, great if you've got a plant that you want to reproduce. Animal cloning, we've got two methods. Okay, so embryo cloning. So what we do is we get our best cow and best bull together. We get them to mate, and then we don't get them to mate. We get the eggs and sperm, and essentially this is IVF. Then instead of just taking that early embryo and implanting it straight back into the mother, what you do is you split it, so we get lots and lots of that brilliant offspring. and these we then let them grow a bit. Okay, we don't ever plant one cell back in. It's crucial you say let it divide, extra mark, and then we implant it into surrogate mum, and we get clones of the cows. Okay, so it won't be the same as mum or dad, but they will be the same as each other. All right. So you can make lots and lots of copies of that, of a really, really good quality sheep or cow. Adult cell cloning. So we take a body cell from sheep A, okay, get the DNA, so the nucleus. We get an egg cell from sheep B. We remove the nucleus, so we've got an empty egg cell. We fuse them together, and we've got to say that requires electricity. We let it divide and then implant into what we call a surrogate mother. Okay, which is that one. And then all the offspring is an exact clone of this one. Okay, so it's brilliant for making, if you've got a perfect animal, you could clone it. Okay. You could potentially save animals from extinction. They might be looking at that with the northern white rhino. Disadvantages could lead to cloning of humans. It reduces variety, so therefore they're more likely to get a disease or succumb to it. Genetic engineering, final thing in this genetics chapter, okay, quite important, they ask this quite a lot. So we get a bacterium. This is for insulin, which is probably the most common example, but it can also be applied to plants. So with insulin, what we do is we get a bacterium, and it contains a small piece of DNA. What we do is get an enzyme to cut a hole in that small piece of DNA. Crucial word is enzyme. And then we get the human gene for insulin production, which we've got from a human cell. We put it into the DNA, okay, put it back into the bacterium will divide, and then it will start to produce insulin. With the plant version, what you'd do is you'd take the plants, so you get the plants, and in the plant would be the DNA, this time in the nucleus, and then you take a gene from maybe another plant or an animal or an insect. Okay, again, take that gene, cut out a bit with the enzymes, and insert it in. And there's some advantages and disadvantages there. Particularly plants, GM plants, what you might get is the genes from these GM plants spread into the wildlife. So you no longer have like proper wild varieties. You might get infertile, so they have to be replaced each year. Okay, the effect of human health on GM is unknown, but we can improve the quality of crops. We can maybe reduce pesticides. So if this is a pesticide gene or a pesticide, it kind of is a gene that kills pests, maybe by producing a poison. Then that means we don't have to use as many pesticides. Okay. Next, very quickly, pyramids of biomass. We talked about this morning. So, in general, biggest pyramid is on the bottom. This is where the plants are, and at the top, the top predators. Okay, don't want to spend. So, just a reminder that in terms of energy lost, so obviously we're going from this to this to this. Energy is lost at each stage, and that's because the animal or plant is moving. Okay, it has to heat itself up, i.e. through respiration. Keeping a constant body temperature for mammals and birds. And waste, there's areas that we can't digest. A lot of waste is produced in urine and feces, so not all of it is passed along. Then we've got decay processes. Okay, so the idea is we've got something dead. Let's say, I don't know what this is supposed to be. A human. Okay, that human would then have microorganisms growing upon it. The microorganisms essentially digest dead material, and they use it as essentially a glucose source in respiration, and that respiration produces CO2. And that's essentially how things get recycled. Now, it works best in warm, moist and aerated conditions. And here's the carbon cycle. Key things that people often get wrong are this is carbon dioxide moving into a plant, so that's photosynthesis. However, they also respire, as do animals, as do the decomposers. Okay, so respiration, we get three essentially releases of respiration, one from animals, one from plants, and one from decomposers. As we said before, okay, we've got these different theories of evolution. Okay, so Lamarck thought that an organism could change in its lifetime and then pass it on. And although you can change to some extent, for example, increasing the size of your muscles, you cannot change your genes. And because you cannot change your genes, you cannot pass it on. So Lamarck was wrong. Darwin, however, was correct. So we've got variation in species that's caused by mutation. They compete for something. In this example, probably for food. Those that are best adapted survive. So this one would die. Sorry, this one would survive. And then this one would breed and pass on its genes. So remember, we've got very many children behave perfectly. Variation caused by mutation, competition for resources, best adapted to survive, pass on their genes. And that's essentially what this side says as well. Okay, so key things. All right, mutations. We just got to know new forms of genes get caused when DNA is copied wrongly in cell division. It's only when they happen in gametes or sex cells that they're actually passed on.